Welcome back to the Willpower Podcast, Rockstars. Today's episode is one of my all-time favorites. We are going to be talking to Juan Pablo Forno. His name is JP, and he's the founder of Meteor, a virtual assistant staffing company. But guys, he's not just building a business, he's building a movement in a way that is so inspirational. He has several years of managing international teams, and he's so passionate about connecting leaders and teams that we are going to learn a ton about leadership, growth, how to empower your team. The wisdom that this young man knows at his age is going to be irritating. I'm going to warn you in advance, but he is thirsty for education and he consumes it at a high level, but he applies it, especially technology, in such a powerful way that you're going to see your business differently by the end of this episode. You're going to have insights on how to become more free, and he's going to share little tips and tricks like how he uses his sleep data to track burnout and when he knows it's time to hire somebody else. It is awesome. So this episode is full of heart, strategy, the intersection of VAs and AIs, and what to look for as you continue to grow so that you don't feel overwhelmed by all of this change. So guys, JP is the kind of guest that makes you want to scale your business and book a flight to Guatemala. Enjoy the show. JP, welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Will. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is an exciting episode. Why don't you introduce your company and why you do it?
Sure. My company's name is called Meteor. We're a talent solution provider. So we essentially help business owners buy back their time by finding top quality virtual and executive assistants. The reason, kind of like why I fell into this is, like everybody, a sequence of life events. I was born in a third world country, but I had the opportunity to almost like be born in a first world context. So I got a chance to go to education in the United States and learn a little bit more about business in the US. But I always had this like itch of using business to help my home country in a way. So I think that this job is
What is your home country? Tell everybody where you're from.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Guatemala. That's actually where I live. And
currently,
yeah, and it's
currently live in Guatemala. Where in Guatemala do you live?
I live in Guatemala City. It's zone 15. Beautiful place. I know you've been there. I know we have that in common. It's it has a lot of culture, a lot of natural landscapes. It's very I really love my country, and I think that a lot of what I do as a professional has to do with that affection towards it and the potential that we could have. And so, yeah, a little bit of why I do it is how can I connect people in my country to like these growing businesses so that businesses can get value and our people could get experience and opportunity. I know we'll dive in a little bit deeper, but that's a little bit more about what we do and why I do it.
Yeah, we have such a strong connection there. As you know, the audience doesn't know that I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Guatemala for 2 years. But I never knew what zone in Guatemala City that you lived in. I actually lived specifically in that zone for 6 months. So
yeah,
Zona 15, that's a beautiful part of the city.
Yeah, I think that there's 2 Latter-day Saints churches in my area, one down by the street. We also see a lot of people still do missions around here. I can see still people we still interact. I think that it's very, very. It has grown in the size of the church here and the influence. It's been great.
Which is a great segue to the audience for why we're really talking. We're here going to share a message. I'm just kidding. We're not doing that at all. We are. I love Guatemala. Guatemala is my heart. When we first met, we were at an Alex Hermosi in-person training, and we're in the same industry, and you're from Guatemala, and it was just like, dude, this is so great. Because that's a big part of why you and I love doing what we're doing, is that we're providing opportunity for people in these countries that just don't have the opportunities that Americans are born with and take for granted. And I think that's what's really vital as we're looking at this AI versus VA concept, is that what we're going to get into later in the episode is all about the impact there. And then we'll talk about how AI is influencing that. But I'm so grateful, JP, because your business is just, what's interesting is that your business, no matter what it is just like any other business. As an owner, you go through stresses and overwhelm. If freedom had a love language, it'd be delegation. So if you're tired of wearing all the hats The CEO hat, the insurance hat, the why am I doing payroll at midnight hat. It's time to get help. Book a free discovery call at virtualrockstar.com and let's show you how hiring a virtual assistant can finally free you up. We have paired hundreds of private practice owners with their ideal virtual rockstar assistants. Don't miss out on the second fastest growing trend in healthcare and in saving $20,000 per year of profit per hire. Remember, you deserve a business that gives more than it takes. Have you ever had a moment in your business where you just felt super overwhelmed and then maybe even burned out? Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, it's not one moment. It's like a collection of moments. Honestly, I think it's funny. I have this sleep tracker that I sleep with, and I could tell when I need to hire someone when my sleep hours go down a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, it's every time it's like oscillating between 3 and 4 hours. You're like, okay, you probably need to hire someone. But no, I think that you hit it all the time, and it's like the cues of when you should iterate or change something in the business, if you're not stubborn enough to listen. But I think that initially it was a lot of, if you want to do what we do right, there's a lot of legal work. There's a lot of considerations if you want to pay people benefits, if you want to do the things right.
Oh yeah.
And so it becomes very administrative in nature. And so when you're trying to grow a business like ours, it's like you're drumming up new business on one end, and then you want to make sure that people are getting paid on time, accurately, that all their questions are being answered. And so the first sort of inflection point in our business was we just hired too many people already. And I was trying to do legal, admin, sales, ops. And I was like, okay, I need to hire my own EA.
Drink or take your own medicine, so to speak.
Take your own medicine, exactly. And we use the benefit is that we have hired a lot of people. So we already knew a lot of candidates. We've already spotted talent. So that was the easy part. And then the business naturally progressed. You could see sales go up dramatically after you implement somebody that buys back your time. So that was kind of one of the big ones. And there's also ones that come with challenges. For example, a key hire leaving your company, that also has a burnout, and you kind of have to deal with that. But yeah, I think for me, the biggest identifier is sleep schedule. And that's what my cue is for hiring. I don't know if it's the most scientific approach, but it's the one that's working for me.
I think the reason I was laughing is because I don't think it's such a beautiful solution. It's actually very clear and simple. And I love the idea of, when this alters and it's a physical response, it's time to do something. But what was cool is that you said your solution was very easy and straightforward, which was you knew it was time to hire someone and buy back your time. We're obviously big Dan Martell fans, and we love that book, Buy Back Your Time. It's probably a core element of what we do professionally, right?
That's why I have it in my background.
I didn't realize that was the book in your background.
Yeah, it's we swear by it for sure.
Yeah, his book was revolutionary. And so you just go your primary approach, it sounds like, to dealing with stress and overwhelm is hiring the right person to buy back your time. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that what you said?
In most cases, yes. I think that if you spend a lot of introspective work and thinking about your business and how it should grow, and if you focus on a lot of what we learned in that workshop with the theory of constraints, what that helps you is gain clarity. And after you have that clarity, what you have left is execution. And a lot of that is okay, we need hands on deck to steward this execution in our business. And so, after you've done the heavy lifting of having clarity in your business, then yes, the execution then becomes a little bit more clear. And it also becomes more clear, not just I need help, but what type of help, what are the tasks that you need to delegate, and what are the skills needed to delegate those tasks. But it all starts with that homework of getting clarity in your business.
That's amazing. I loved that Rockstars, what JP said. I hope you heard the nugget there of once you get clear in your business, what's left is execution. It's really a beautiful concept because sometimes we're just out there executing. And I felt this way yesterday, actually, JP. I was running around spinning plates all day, and there was this vital communication that got missed. I was able to address it this morning, but it really had me be present to this idea of clarity equals power. And how when I am just so in the motion of doing, it's a paradox, right? if we don't just start getting into motion, nothing ever evolves. The picture appears when the car is in motion. But on the other side of that coin is if you're just driving as quickly as you can, everything in front of you, you're not taking the time to get your GPS straight, which is the clarity of what you need. So it's a balancing act between those two things. Any thoughts come to mind for you on that?
Yeah, when you're talking about like because it can also be a double-edged sword where you're just like scheming and thinking and like just running the business from like your Notion brainstorming page. And I don't think that that's also good. It's a little bit different than what we learn in school. In school is almost like we study and then we take the test. But in business it's completely the opposite. We get tested, we fail, and now we have to study for what eventually broke or what we still have to learn in order to move forward. And so movement and action is what triggers a lot of like the changes in your business. So it is that combination of introspection and action, and stepping away from the business and thinking about it and then executing. But like that's why, to your point, and Tony Robbins says it a lot, of clarity is power, is because then you could put your nose down and then just go at it, and then you can also cancel out a lot of the noise. So yeah, absolutely. I think that motion and introspection are both equal, are valued equally in the growth of any business.
Yeah, I like the way you balanced that out. It was funny because you also talked about noise. I was listening to, I forgot his real name, Mr. Wonderful from the Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary. Yeah, he was on a YouTube short that I was watching, and he was talking about this concept. He said he worked for Steve Jobs, which I didn't know. And you mentioned Steve Jobs earlier, but he worked for Steve Jobs. He's like, that guy was a jerk, just a huge jerk. But what he was really good at was that he knew what the 1 to 3 things were each day that needed the most. It needed all of his focus and attention, and everything else was noise to him.
Yeah.
And he said the only person who does it better is Elon Musk. Regardless of how people think and feel about him, Elon Musk, he says he usually has one thing. And it's like the one problem. Alex Hormozi even talks about this idea of like, there's one problem in our business that it's the only thing that matters, because if you solve this one thing, it makes everything else less important or the problem obsolete. So you just solve that one problem at a time. I am really just being transparent, JP. I'm struggling with that. I know there's like, I'll have like 30 things to do and I'll know my top 3 to 4, but like one thing that just, I'm still not able to get there. What's that like for you in your business? Do you do something similar to that, or is that, I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I think that in that concept, I think that he was talking about like the signal to noise ratio. And I think it's very true. Yeah, but I think it's really hard to focus on like one thing exclusively, because I think it's more like maybe even the size of the business is like, how if you have like a ton of executives and like a huge organization, then you could probably segment who does what and who focuses on what. But small businesses tend to have a different dynamic, at least in my opinion. We work almost exclusively with small businesses. And I think that the frame that we use more is like, I don't know if you've ever read the book of the 4 Disciplines of Execution.
I have.
Yeah, so it's from the Covey brand. I think it's Stephen Covey's son who wrote it. And he talks about the difference between the whirlwind and like the highly or wildly important tasks. But it is a combination. There's like that 70% of the day-to-day task, the putting out fires, the spinning plates, as you said. Like the work still needs doing in that sense. But there has to be time carved out for the wildly important goals in your business, the strategic initiatives. So I try to have one strategic initiative at any given moment. For us right now is to build a bigger talent pool, for example, for virtual assistants. But it is almost impossible to only do exclusively that at the size that we are and the responsibilities that are still on my shoulder. There's still like emails to be written. There's still demo calls to be had, so I think that that's a dream stage that at one point you can. I think that more of like when I look at Elon Musk, I also see like it might be like focused hours in like a specific stream rather than like I'm only doing this for like a season of my life, because he doesn't, right? Like you can see he's running like 4 major organizations. Yeah. Like it's crazy, right? But I think that when we're working on this, we're working on this. Alex Ramosi even has an example of like when he was working through like something that he had to do with his new director of marketing. And he's like, okay, let's do it. And bolted 8 hours straight into one task. And then, okay, like what's the next thing? So there are multiple things, but the ability to channel focus into one stream, I think it's the power, at least for us.
Yeah, I agree. I love that idea. And I think there's elements as you were talking where I could see historically where I have done that in some ways. I just think kind of like you were saying, the stages of business dictate how many resources we have to focus on things.
Yeah.
You know, this stage of business early on, especially in private practices, this thing about trading time for money, it's where most people get stuck because by the concept of the business itself, people are going to not have enough time because they're trading their time for money. So if they don't find a way to hire and buy back their time, which is the book probably is the theme of this episode, then they're stuck in this cycle of just trading time for money. And because they feel like, well, if I stop doing the thing that's making money, I won't have money and then there will be no business. And that's the fallacy of that. So as we get to a point now, and then obviously this is a great discussion around just like understanding how business grows and getting freedom. So like in your case, what do you ever have periods where you feel like you're getting free of your business? Like, have you ever felt like, I mean, are you taking vacations? Like, where are you at, JP, in your business?
Yeah. So right now we're like in a growth stage, right? And for us is the first 2 years of our business has really been on like, how do we build a product or service that people want to rave to their friends about, right? And so we weren't focused too much on like distribution or business development. I just wanted to find the best people for the best companies, right? And so that's what we spend most of the time doing. And now we're more like, okay, we have a model that works. How do we like tell more people about it, right? So that's kind of like where we're at. I am not the type of person to take a lot of like vacations or breaks. I am at a point, I'm single, I have no kids. So I almost think about it
as
like,
young.
Hey, so I think this is a time for me to work a little bit hard, but I do take breaks. I just can't unplug for a weekend. I get too anxious of like, you know, like things that I want to do. But I like to take longer breaks. So for example, for the end of this year, I'm going to go visit, I have family in Italy. And so I'm going there for Christmas, basically gaining back all the weight I lost this year for 3 weeks. And then I'm taking them back. I'm bringing them back to Guatemala for like a 10-day trip, showing them around town. And so I'd rather have like the long vacations and like long breaks. And then that recharges me for the rest of the year. But in terms of like getting free from my business, I am obsessed with like getting most of my time dedicated to the major constraint of the business. And so like, who do I have to hire? Who do I have to train? What tool do I have to buy? It's a combination of like, what is like the best solution? Can we change something about an offer that maybe our clients don't perceive as valuable, but we just do it because like it makes us feel good that we're doing something, you know, like there's all these things. And so how do we simplify the business? How do we streamline our operation and fulfillment? But I would feel comfortable leaving 2 weeks without me being in the business because the team is trained. The only thing that would slow down is sales because I'm leading
You're
sales.
the primary sales, yeah.
So that would be the only thing. We wouldn't get probably like new clients, but I think that the operation would run like, you know, without glitches.
You know, just as a side note, in my VA business, we are working on developing some actual VAs to become salesmen for us. And we were finding early on, JP, just as a share, that like having someone from the other country be the person on the screen immediately resolves a lot of the initial questions and concerns that normally an American answers.
Yeah, they're a case study.
Even though you're Guatemalan, you're so Americanized in the sense that like I would never know, right? But like, it's one of those things where they're a living case study where they get on. So I'll let you know how that goes as you're scaling. But two things you said I want to hit. One thing is this idea of longer breaks, just because, you know, I feel like we're brothers from other mothers, is that I do the same thing. I have developed a business to where I'm so excited about what I'm working on that it doesn't always feel like work. And a lot of times feels like a hobby at certain stages of what I'm working on. So that I do like taking longer breaks. And I encourage everyone who's listening to ask yourself, what would happen if I left my business for a month? And then there's two elements of that. rock stars, when you ask yourself what would happen if I leave my business for a month, there's a lot of initial fear that kicks in. Some of it is warranted and some of it is not. Some of it is mindset, thinking that I am more vital to the business than I really am. But there is parts of it that are true. Like you can't just like pull away one day and be gone for a month. But I will tell everyone their goal. I want everyone who's listening, if it sounds like it'd be awesome to leave your business for a month and travel the world or whatever, if that sounds good to you, to please make that a goal, because there's actually nothing better for the businesses that I've owned over the years than taking long breaks. You know, I tell them what I'm doing. They see I'm working extra hard in advance, so it's not like I have to earn that.
Justify,
Yeah, but what I tell them is like, hey, listen, there's many reasons why I want to leave, but one of them is to empower you guys and really like help this thing run so that it's not me dependent, it's a team dependency. And then what I have found is that my team actually really enjoys it when I leave, and production in almost every case has gone up because I prepare for that. So I think there's lots of value. It just as like a side note, you and I are so wired the same way that like, longer breaks are cool, but they're also really good for your business. One question I have for you, JP, you said that you love working on your primary constraint of your business. For people listening, how do you identify that primary constraint? Like, how do you even know what that constraint is?
Well, a lot of it is forward-thinking growth. I think that you go through mental exercises, right? So, for example, what I started doing is if we got 100 clients today, would we be able to fulfill, right? And what would start breaking? And I think that sort of like mental exercise started us to like, every entrepreneur has this thing of like saying like, I'll say yes and then I'll figure out how later on, right? Like, but the how like comes very fast after you say yes. And so for me, like it's almost doing these mental exercises is like, okay, if I got 100 clients, what would break in my business? And for us is like, we used to do we still do very white glove customized searches for each individual company that we work with. And doing that for 100 people, I would have to train a bunch of recruiters, which is why we're transitioning from like a cohort or campaign-based approach to more of a talent-based approach. And that was like a big constraint. But before, like sales, for example, as a constraint is like, why or the other mental exercise is like benchmarking, right? Is okay, let's model after people who have been successful in our industry and what type of growth trajectories they have. Are we compared to that? And if not, what is it about our business that is allowing or it's not allowing us to grow? It's almost like, I don't know if you've ever played those like plumbing games where you have like the pipes and like the screws and the bolts and stuff, and like and you start identifying like where the water is getting stuck, right? And so a lot of the forward thinking is like benchmarking and like doing these exercises of what would happen if. But the other side is like, if you live in your business, you kind of like just know where is it that we're getting stuck? Where is the largest cause of frustration? A calendar is an excellent way of identifying your constraint. Is what problem takes me the most amount of time out of my calendar? And so there's different ways. I think also having like good mentors or good people that know business. I think that having conversations with the acquisitions.com team was very helpful for us to identify constraints, because they've seen patterns in our similar service-based businesses before and be like, hey, forget all this noise that might look like an issue. This is like, if you fix this, all these other things you'll be able to fix. So like the whole concept of like sales cures all, right? Mark Cuban likes to say, right? Yeah. Like in some businesses, the biggest constraint is like, you're just too small at the moment. Just focus on promoting more of your business and stuff. So I think taking all those inputs and then coming up with like your own answers to that is what I've been doing to identify the constraint. But I don't know, like, do you have a different framework on how you identify constraints?
No, I love what you said, because you hit various options. I think sometimes it's clear. Here's a summary of what you said for the rock stars that I thought was so beautiful. Sometimes you know. Sometimes you're in it, you just know. Wow, this thing sucks. It's clearly the biggest problem. For example, like if a private practice runs out of new patients, they need to get new patients. Yeah. It's like it's really clear in that case. But sometimes there's a saying in physical therapy that relates to that Mark Cuban quote that really shouldn't be true, in my opinion, which is that there's no problem that more new patients doesn't solve. And I tell people, oh, really? Does that solve recruiting? Does that make more physical therapists show up in your business ready to treat? No. So it's really powerful, because The second thing you mentioned, first, sometimes you know. Second, sometimes you have to do mental exercises. Okay, so if this happens, then that. What, and you start, it's called vision. The number one job of any owner, of any CEO. Hold on, I'm going to re-say this for my short that my virtual assistant's going to pull out of this episode.
Yeah, sure.
The single most important role that a CEO has in a business is visionary. Part of that vision is creating the path in the future, but part of it are these mental exercises that we do to identify the primary constraint in our business. And when we are focused and spending time in that role, we are able to avoid, turn decades into days because we're able to foresee different problems. But the third thing you mentioned, JP, was sometimes we go to coaching. You work with acquisition.com team. I am as well. This sounds like a commercial for those guys. I would love some sort of feedback from their team on like us helping them grow. But it's true. Like we met at one of those conferences but you don't have to spend that kind of money. You can invest in a coach that's really talented who can help you identify the constraints. So in our industry, there's numerous coaches that are great. I've had them on the show. So it's this concept of like, sometimes sometimes you got to do the exercise, but sometimes you've got to be with a coach or somebody who's higher level to help you identify the real constraint. And I think, it's, by the way, I really appreciate you saying that because I'm realizing that's what I need. Yesterday and today, I'm confused right now in my business on where the major constraint is because there's 3 or 4 things that seem super urgent and important, but I know they're different. And I know there's got to be one that rules them all. So I'm excited to meet with my team and figure that out. So no, I think that's great that you are able to identify that constraint. So JP, let's pivot now into more of a fireside chat on this thing called artificial intelligence and virtual assistants. You own a virtual assistant company, so do I. What's your take on the fear that a lot of people are saying that AI is going to replace VAs altogether?
Yeah, it's probably like one of the hottest topics that I have from, clients, from with candidates or current employees is like, what's going to happen? And, it's an interesting stage. I was telling you a little bit before I got started that I like to think of like, what are the frameworks that can help me navigate through periods of uncertainty or of, we've had different kinds of like inflection points in history, right? And I think that history for me is like a very powerful frame for us to like look through and gather some of those either lessons learned or cautionary tales to like identify how we should behave around this. And the AI revolution is definitely an inflection point, just like the agricultural revolution was, like the industrial revolution was, or the digital revolution was. All of those time periods cause anxiety because all of them rewired the world in a lot of ways. But I don't think that if I look through that lens, I don't think that none of those inflection points eliminated human value. They just modified or shifted where the value lived, right? It's not like, the printing press eliminated writers, right? Or the calculator eliminated mathematicians, or spreadsheets eliminated accountants for that matter. I think it just reshaped on what value they bring. And so when we're looking at this artificial intelligence revolution, I think that, definitely jobs are going to be shifted and the value that a human can bring will be shifted. But it's more a conversation of tools and leverage than like completely replacing someone, I feel like. And I think that, we can get into this whole discussion of like tools, but I think that this revolution comes in to, again, shift the value of where, or shift where value lives. And I think the human component will always be there. Where artificial intelligence can bring execution, humans still bring judgment and intuition and empathy and a lot of the things that are still valued in the marketplace. It's just, how do we wield these new tools in order to get better outcomes and higher leverage outputs? So that's a little bit of how I think about this kind of thing. I'd love to hear your opinion and dive in a little bit more into these concepts, but I think it's just another inflection point where we have to reshape where value lives.
I really appreciate that perspective on it. And it's so cool, JP, because, I think of it like this. There's this global impact of AI, but I obviously think of it through the lens of that subline of healthcare. So there's the global impact, and then there's healthcare. I feel like healthcare is like a revolution behind the world. Like, I think like they're still trying to just early stage figure out virtual assistants, even though the rest of the world has been leveraging them like massively for a long time.
Yeah.
When I talk to a lot of people in healthcare, there's still a lot of a fear of just having someone who's not physically in the space handle things. Whereas in the tech world, working out of the Philippines, Guatemala, India, other countries has been like 40 years. I mean, they've been doing this for a long time now. So the AI thing is really, you're probably more on the cutting edge of how AI is disrupting the virtual assistant space. For me, I have a similar perspective of more optimism. I believe it's kind of like what you said. You look at history as a model, and you look at inflection points. When the automobile came out, this came from Gary Vee. When the automobile came out, it eliminated, like in New York alone, there were thousands of jobs of men and women who literally their whole income was cleaning up manure in the streets behind all these horses that were the primary mode of transportation. And so now you have automobiles, and guess what? All these industries disappear forever, but did it lead to a better life for people or a worse life in general? Much better. So there's these changes that occur and ultimately they benefit everyone. I guarantee those people who were once cleaning manure found other things that were created by the new revolution. So I'm super excited. I when I started my company, I've shared this story on this show before, but when I first piloted this program with some physical therapy owners, and they were like, Will, this has been the best thing for my business. We're saving money. You solved a major headache, and I love my people, and they're doing better than the Americans. Like, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. But I told my wife, we were in Bali on our 25th anniversary trip, and we were in Bali, and just like you, I just don't stop thinking about these things, right? Like, so like it was early morning, I was on a walk, and she joined me, and she's kind of used to it by now. We've been married 27 years, and she's like, so what's that thing in your mind about the business that you're excited about? I said, honey, Virtual Rockstar is going to be this great business. I said, but I know, because I'm a visionary like you. I'm like, in 10 years or less, there will not be, like, you'll go into a medical clinic, in my opinion, and you'll see an artificial intelligent avatar that is just perfect. The right amount of enthusiasm and personalization. You won't tell the difference, and you won't care. You just love the customer service. I said, do I start an industry that I know is going to get massively disrupted in a matter of years? And she had the wisdom to say, Will, she's like, people need this now. You just got to be willing to pivot into what's coming, and you'll be, and so ever since then, I have never had any fear on it. I will say this. I do have fear. It's called FOMO. I am scared, JP, that like, there's something really cool I could be on the cutting edge of doing in my business that I'm missing out on. So it's not a fear of like, oh no, are we going to still be in business? It's like, can I be the guy that rides that wave into the future with my people and my customers and my VAs and really make a difference? So I know you're kind of in that same boat too. Like you're not just like, oh, it's going to be good. You're like rolling into artificial intelligence in your business.
Yeah, no, this is going to be amazing, right? Like that's kind of like what I think about. I'm highly optimistic. And also I think that I was reading the other day, right? Like the Small Business Association put out a number that something like 10 to 15,000 small business licenses get issued every day. Like
what?
There's so many businesses starting or like getting started. And for example, like going back to the Industrial Revolution, people were afraid that every single piece of manual labor was going to get displaced. And look around, there's still manual labor. There's some people that prefer a handmade chair than like a factory manufactured one. Sure. So even if like people are like in VA businesses, there are still going to be businesses that are like AI averse. They still prefer the human element to it. And there's a big enough pie for those kinds of businesses, regardless. You just have to be able to find them. But like that's just for people who are reluctant to change. I would feel like there's still a lot of industry left, and I think it's still growing regardless of like AI. That could just be my assumption. But going back to the optimism of artificial intelligence, I think that, you know, you're right. some of these things are starting to get replaced. Like the first thing that gets replaced is mechanical tasks or repetitive tasks. But people think like, oh, but you won't be able to, replace empathy or replace. I don't think that's true. I think that if everything is patterns and inputs and outputs, I think that the last thing that will be the hardest thing to replace would be intuition. Like what are those calculations that your intuition can make? I don't think that could be recreated because I don't think we truly understand where intuition comes from. So we can't model for it. But, like it's just a matter of time before like things get taken care of. But it's just, I see it as a tool or a tool that provides leverage. But even if you have a fulcrum and a stick, you still need a hand to pull it to make sure that the leverage is actualized. So I see it as the latest and most powerful tool that we've ever developed, and it will augment what we could do. And I am also fascinated about what changes will AI have on us. And if you look at history, like I think there's a famous quote, I forget who says it, but we shape tools and then tools shape us. Wow. Like when we were able to harness fire, for example, we were able to cook meat. And so now we didn't need these like bone structures and jaws that can like break down fibers. And so like our skull shaped, and now that led way to like our brains being able to get bigger and added space for cognitive development, right? So that's how like a tool that we harness changed the way that we do things or the way that we evolved. So I'm also curious to see like how we're going to be evolving. But for us, it's like, okay, AI is one of the most potent tools. And so how can we help virtual assistant harness or wield these tools so that they can become superhuman, right? Or super soldiers, if you will. How can one virtual assistant have the output of 5-10 years ago?
Yes.
And so the bridge in these inflection points versus like the world that used to be and the world that is now has always been skill development, has always been learning and training and education. And so that's why for me, one of the things that I'm most excited about is introducing that element in our business is how can we help, these virtual assistants, executive assistants be the latest toolsmiths, right? Of how they can harness and use this. And I think that that's what's going to be exciting. So artificial intelligence will displace virtual assistants, but the ones that are reluctant of like learning how to use these tools. That's a little bit of where I'm spending a lot of my headspace.
Yeah, that's cool. I have the same. I think I'm willing to bet anyone who's not like had their head in the ground and who owns a virtual assistant company right now is having to like take these discussions on. I would say that there's a percentage of us who are super excited about it though. And it's very similar how I feel. This idea, the term we use is supercharged VA. We want to create a supercharged VA with AI so that down the road, someone only needs to hire one of our VAs that can do the job of 5. Like to me, the person who gets scared by that thinking, well, that could have been 5 times the business isn't seeing the bigger picture. It's like, then our people become the gateway for our clients to stay on top of the tools that matter most to them. Like if our businesses, JP, are doing the legwork for our clients in our niches to be like, hey, you don't need to worry about the 30 different programs that came out today in artificial intelligence. Your VA is your gateway into AI, I think it makes our firms more valuable because the VA themselves isn't going to spend time doing that. They're going to take direction from you and I. So if you and I are visionaries and like looking at all the different programs and going, oh, this is the one we want to use for this application, and we're constantly evolving that for our clients, right now, they're using us mostly because they don't want to source the candidates. They don't want to have to deal with some of the HR components. They don't know how to pay someone overseas. They're trying to save money. And that's kind of it. And there's a growing trend with people going, well, why would I use a company? Why can't I just go into onlinejobs.ph and just go hire someone directly? And I tell them they should. I'm always like, just go. If that calls to you, go do it. But if you're like growing and you need to outsource, we can help you with those problems. But when we start adding AI development within the team, then it's like, well, the reason I go with those guys, Meteor or Virtual Rockstar, is because those guys are out there finding the best tools for me. I don't have to think about it. And then they teach the VA. And then the VA just brings them into my company and shows the rest of us how to use them. So it's kind of like this idea of like, we get super excited because sure, we're only going to, we're only going to have one VA where we could have, leased 5 times that amount, but the value of that one VA goes up. And that means that we can make a bigger impact. And I just know that model wise, once we do that, everything else is easy. I don't have it figured out, but once we can do that, it's going to be super easy to grow the influence and serve our clients.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of things that you said that I really like, but I think that also it becomes a much more engaging job for the virtual assistants. Going back to the people that clean manure in the streets, we don't really miss those jobs, right? There's not like oh man, the good old days when we used to have these jobs, right? And I think that there's a lot of like redundancies and a lot of like boring tasks that comes with like the repetitiveness of the nature of a virtual assistant. And so like I think that now it makes the jobs a little bit more dynamic, more engaging. And so for example, the other thing that I think about all the time is to your point, there's like this AI revolution, and a lot of people are like me. I am a super late adopter to things. Like I'm not an early adopter. I am 100% more of like let's wait and see. I don't really know about this kind of stuff. Like so I rather learn from others' mistakes before I jump in forward. And so a lot of business owners are like, I hear about this whole AI stuff. I think we would benefit from it, but I don't understand it enough. And I think it is a way to introduce not only AI, but you're introducing AI at such an important place inside of your organization. David Marquet has a book called Turn the Ship Around. And it's one of the best leadership framework books that I've ever written, or I've ever read, rather. And one of the things that he says is that you want to move authority where the information is. If someone is boots on the ground, you should be giving them the authority to or the autonomy to introduce new solutions, new tools. And so like a virtual assistant that is in the day-to-day, it's executing stuff, like they're in the best position to identify which tools they can implement and stuff. And so, yeah, I think that is important. But you also said, the 30 tools that came out today. I think also what we should be spending some time on is being cautious of any frenzy that's happening. Like AI right now, like you open LinkedIn, everybody's like, hey, I just automated this workflow that allowed me to do X, Y, and Z, DM me tool for whatever, right? Like, right. There's a lot of different things. And going back to like historical examples, I think of like, for example, the gold rush, right? And what was that like? That was such an interesting time period for me to like reflect on, because yes, it was real. There was gold in California, but it was also like there has to be managed expectations when it came to like going there. Like they made it seem like you would just go down, kneel on the river and pick up gold, right? And that's the same thing that I see with AI is like, hey, you just download this tool, implement it, and your whole workflow is going to be optimized. Right. I don't think that's the case, right? Like there's some nuance, there's difficulty, you need judgment. And so I think that we should also just pay attention to these cautionary tales. Also, like in the gold rush, I found this very interesting. It was like it led space to a lot of scammers and fraud and con artists, right? They would sell like these bags of soil that were supposedly having gold in them. It was just dust. They would sell like fool's gold, or they would sell broken tools, right? So yes, in the gold rush, the people who sold the shovels were the ones that make the most money. And that's what people are thinking right now, and that everybody's coming up with an AI tool. Everybody's coming up with AI workflow and automation workflows. And so I think that having someone like you and I who can help them filter through like what's real and what's not. We also speak with a bunch of business owners. And so we understand like commonality of issues or commonality of constraints. And we could be like, hey, we could anticipate a constraint that you're having. And we already have a tool that we've worked with in other practices that you should probably try to implement to solve XYZ problem, right? So there's a lot of what you said that I really like, and I think it's just like who can help introduce this into your organization without the clutter and the noise and like the potential scammers and con artists out there that's taking advantage of the frenzy out there.
Yeah, what beautiful comments you made. the equivalent of shoveling manure in healthcare, just so you know how you're like, did people really miss shoveling manure?
Yeah.
The equivalent of that is doing anything with medical insurance verification, authorization. My listeners are laughing to themselves right now. If you're walking on you're smiling, I see you, because like it is straight up manure. And it is so funny because like if we can automate those elements, great. But I think what's cool about what your second side of that comment is to take the pressure off. The idea of like, we don't have to run and buy every shovel that is being sold. We can, it's a little bit of both. There's this gold rush going on. We should be mindful of it, but we don't change our whole world to go like, let's sell the business and let's go buy a shovel. I think it's a matter of like understanding what the impact is, doing the mental exercise you mentioned earlier, and staying current with people who are sharing that information. I love that quote you made from Turn the Ship Around. Can you say it again? Like authority and thought leader. What was that piece again?
Yeah. So this book was super interesting. It was about a submarine captain that, I don't know. I'll just give a brief context.
No, go for it. I think this is on topic. Sure.
In order for you to become like a submarine captain, you have to study the ship like almost like a year in advance, so that you understand like how every nut and bolt operates inside of the submarine. And this and because decision making and orders are centralized and they're in a hierarchy, so the captain barks orders, and then everybody executes, and that's how usually submarines are ran. Well, this submarine captain had studied the whole year for, I think, the U.S. Olympia or something like that. And then on the last moment, they changed the submarine to him for the Santa Fe, which was the lowest performing submarine in the entire Navy. And so he was like in a ship that he didn't train for, and it was supposed to be leading these people. And he started noticing a part of his crew members were executing on his orders that they knew was wrong. Right. And so like, we're like, why are you listening to me? Why didn't you say something that we can't do this in this submarine? And he started running into all these issues of execution because he was the point of command and he was barking out orders that didn't make sense. So he was like, the only way that we're going to make this work is if we change our leadership style. And so one of the concepts is like, how do you give autonomy to the people inside of your organization so that they're not depending on you? So going back to buying back your time, the most powerful thing that you can do in your business is having autonomous executors inside of your organization. He said you need two things for that. You need organizational clarity and technical competence. And so as long as somebody knows where you want to get to and also has the right set of skills to get you there, you should leave them to do their job, right? So that was one of like their concepts. But then he mentioned you want to move authority where the information is. In a submarine, before it's separate, right? You move information over to the authority. So like the crew members are feeding information to the captain, and then the captain makes decisions. It's that you have one brain commanding 300 souls, where you can have the inverse of 300 autonomous and purpose-driven people that are guiding the organization. You don't stand a chance against somebody that runs their organization that way. And so what we do, for example, is we make sure that we have technical competence in your mix, right? So like if we're hiring a virtual assistant, we're making sure that they are technically capable, they're a good culture fit, and this is a career progression for them. There's a job fit. That's our job. Your job as a leader is to instill that organizational clarity, the mission, where we want to get to, what's the biggest constraint, what are we attacking? And then if you have that, you should be free to move authority where the information is. And besides just authority, it's also to the virtual assistant, to the employee, to whatever it is, because they have technical skills and organizational clarity. But the same thing is with AI, right? Like, you are okay with them introducing these tools because you know that they're technically competent and they know where you want to lead the organization to. So for me, that has always been a great framework of a book. There's other concepts of leadership and how do you disseminate the ownership and authorship inside of your organization. But those concepts of like, let's make sure that we get the right people on the bus. Let's make sure that they understand where we're trying to get to. And then let's actually make the letting go process of like, allowing them to own their positions and contribute to this overall mission that we're all steering towards, right? So that was a roundabout way of like explaining that concept, but I just wanted to provide that little bit of context.
It's so on topic because the bigger arching theme of this whole season is freedom, right? So like when you're talking about, and then I mean, what's beautiful is the application, because you own a VA company, automatically speaks into these trends of AI and VA, because you're talking about moving authority where the information is. And so again, like if your VAs, your job right now is to make sure that they're skilled, that they have a future, they're culturally aligned. It's the owner's job of the company that you're working with to make sure there's a vision and a path. But then you can make them autonomous as they're in that space. And then where does AI come in? Well, that's the information. It's more information. It's like, again, that's where you and I are passionately pushing forward, is gathering the tools that we think are great or creating our own tools that are missing. And that way the owners can stay focused on their business and not have to run out and buy more shovels during the gold rush. They can have one thing solve all things, but the end result is the same: freedom. That's kind of why I think that was so important to hit that concept from Turn the Ship Around, is that all these elements we're talking about are the foundation of. It's weird, JP, because it's not just freedom. It's like the biggest impact we can ever make in our business. The things that we do to make the most money, to help the most number of people, is the same things we do to get freedom for ourselves as leaders. Mm-hmm. There's no difference. The only shift is when someone like you comes along and you have a little bit of freedom. You and I both, I would say, we choose to go into growth mode. That's the primary thing we do with our freedom. It's like we could, if you were building a business, you were just going to have a passive ownership on, and you wanted to go hit those beautiful beaches in Guatemala that I know. You wouldn't be as busy as you are right now. Like no. you could work a lot less hard, but what fuels you, and I want you to clarify if I'm wrong on this, but what fuels you more than anything is bringing opportunity to this wonderful people that just weren't born with it, right? Like that's one of the drivers for you. And when that drives you, it's not work. That is freedom. You're busy, quote unquote, but you are more anxiously engaged in a good cause than you are busy, right?
I think that, I mean, that is so true. Cause like most people that say like, oh, I'm going to start a business so that I could like retire and live on a beach, then you're not an entrepreneur. I mean, like that's not, I think that no, cause like if I had more discretionary time, I would do something, like I would start something else. And when I'm like,
start another business,
right. Like, I'm like, that's how we're all sick in the head, I think, a little bit, totally. But yeah, I tell my friends all the time when I'm having trouble like sleeping or falling asleep, I think all of them feel preoccupied because they think that I'm worried or anxious. I'm excited. That's like why I can't go to sleep. Like I'm thinking about all these ideas, and I think that that's kind of like what drives me. But yeah, it's this whole overarching concept of freedom for bandwidth so that you can magnify the impact. And so I think that is true in an organization. And I think that it's also very, very powerful or very rewarding for like a virtual assistant, somebody who's working as a virtual executive assistant, and also for the business owner. Because traditionally what I have seen is that people think of a virtual assistant as a static or stationary post, right? Like this is all you're going to ever be kind of like role, like only answering emails, only doing calendar. And like, this is kind of like your role all the time. I don't think that that's the smartest way to like use a virtual or an executive assistant. The best companies that we work with promote their virtual assistant, give them more responsibility, give them other people to manage. They grow them. My executive assistant started as an executive assistant. In 3 months, he became our operations manager because like they're so involved into what we do that they can run parts of our business as well. And so like this whole thing of like you as a business owner want to let go of those tasks and give those people who are like being a steward or that are stewarding your mission, you want to give them more responsibility, more autonomy. You want to continue to grow them. And so like for them, they're working in an organization that has upward mobility, that has a growth roadmap, that they're both, you know, growing and contributing, which are the two things that drive engagement and employment. And for you as a business owner, you're increasing bandwidth and latitude for you to tackle all the other things that you want to do to grow the business. And so like I think that this is also where AI comes in and gives that space for growth and more freedom for you to spend more restless nights thinking about the things that you want to continue building and doing, right? Like it gives you that bandwidth and that space. But yeah, so I see that all the time is like VAs are going to be like, oh, I'm going to be here for 3 years and then I'm going to have to change a company because I won't be able to grow. that's completely the opposite. You're in like one of the best positions to influence an organization, and that's where you have your growth roadmap.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. My Kim was my executive assistant to start. Now she's my executive director. She runs my podcast, social media. I have a professional brand, and I have a personal one that I actually keep them separate. And so we're posting 8 things online every day across 8 different platforms. And I do about an hour of work for that per week. Of course, I do the podcast, which is more of a passion project, but it's this idea of like, she has stepped into this role now where she's overseeing the growth of podcasts. In the last months, tens of thousands of followers she's been able to oversee. And I'm just like, I would never have done that. I could have never have done that. And realizing that the virtual assistant isn't a static post, but it's an entry point into growing not just them, but the business. Yeah. It's such a, it's so funny when I talked to someone for the first time. I had a call yesterday with this multi-location PT practice, and there was like 6 guys on this call. I think they have like 50 company locations. And it was interesting because they just don't know what they don't know. And they were very progressive. They had very great questions, some of the best, but there was this one individual who was very myopic and being like, well, but what about this risk and that fear? And it was so hard for me not to go, oh man, you're willing to let this small unknown limit what you guys could do to completely transform thousands of lives. Like you are literally being handed an opportunity that's going to free you up and expand your business and change these lives of people overseas. So it's our job. I think that's where you and I are called, JP, to be less about like, hey, come work with our companies, and more about like leaders of information. And being like, hey, this is how we have to start thinking, because it's not that it's scary. It's because it's exciting. It's so exciting. I feel like I have said this to many of my employees. I've never been happier than I am professionally. And I'm just as busy, or if not busier, than I've ever been. But it's because like we're on the front of this incredible movement that's changing the world and the lives, in my case, of our patients and our clients who are operators of that. So yeah, man, it's a big responsibility, it's a baby for you and I to be in this space of VAs and AIs and like helping people navigate the world of that, so that they don't listen to the noise, but realize this is going to help them focus on their main priorities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and a lot of what I'm doing, like I have a background in sales. I used to do door-to-door sales. I used to do like insurance and all this other stuff, but I've never been the type of salesperson that's like very like salesy. I'd rather be like more consultative, and it's like, okay, let me understand your business and see if we can even help, or like where you're at. And a lot of those times I find myself in those conversations that it's limiting beliefs, or, so a lot of what we're doing instead of like selling is change management, right? And just like doing like, okay, let's think about like these scenarios, right? And or tell me a little bit of where you're spending your time. A lot of the times we also talk with people who have tried the virtual assistant route and it hasn't worked for them. Right. I love this like frame that Alex taught in that workshop. Is like, hey, if it's almost like you going on one date that went bad and not dating ever again, right? So it's like you're allowing a bad
dating doesn't work.
Yeah, you're allowing a bad instance to burn you twice when you made the first mistake, and then and the second thing is like you're letting it burn you because it's preventing you from giving it a shot ever again. And so a lot of the time I'm also spending on like, hey, no, the virtual assistant, executive assistant route, the strategy works. It's the execution we need to pay attention to. And a lot of it's like, oh, but what about this? Or am I going to have to let go of that? Or I don't trust anybody could do this in the right way. And it is true. Your business will grow to the extent that you're willing to let go. And Dan Martell has a fantastic quote on this, is like 80% done. 80% done by somebody else is 100% awesome, right? Like, yes, you live and breathe your business. There's a lot of things that people are not going to be able to do the way that you want them to do. Dan Martell also says that sometimes you can find someone that could do it better, and it's just like an ego check for you to like but
Yeah, we do. We keep those people down because it's a more of like how we identify ourselves. Like, well, no one's as good as a therapist as I am.
right.
It's like, well, is that true?
But a lot of it is change management and changing beliefs and all that stuff. And it's more of like, okay, you're doing what you're doing for the sake of you being right, and you're missing out on the opportunity to completely revolutionize your business. And when you frame it that way, and most people are like afraid more of the transition than like the actual change. Like, what is going to happen? How am I going to pay them? Like, are they going to speak my language? And to your point, like, it's very advantageous for me from Guatemala being able to have these demo calls, because I am a good case study of like, you can find people that can speak English, like it's
how can you understand what I'm saying right now?
Yeah. And also like, we're very westernized when it comes to our culture. Like I still root for the Phoenix Suns, even though they break my heart every year, right? Like
every year, man, they break my heart.
Yeah. And so I think, a lot of it is like being a psychologist to business owners and understanding. But it's that future of like reducing all the like the lag inside of your business. You talk about it like that. What's the insurance is the annoying part of physical therapy practice. I work with a few telehealth people, and they were talking about the shortage of nurses. There's like 94,000 nurse shortage in the United States, which is like huge. And they were like saying, you know how much time they spend with EMRs and like just writing notes down and like stuff that like it's not nursing, right? It's
all for the insurance. Like they say it's for the patient history. There's like 10% of that. Everything else is just paid.
And so like, can we do away with those things? Like, but yeah, it's just a matter of breaking patterns of what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So JP, this has been a phenomenal episode. We have so much more that we could talk about. It's really hard for me not to keep breathing into this. I think we're gonna have to have you back. This episode, I think, is so much about freedom and so much about latest technologies. Yeah, AI and VAs being there, but we're talking a lot more than that. So what I'd like to do is let's do the rapid fire.
Sure.
And then definitely I'd love to have you back. This has been such a great episode. So let's get the rapid fire questions underway. All right, man. I don't know if you haven't already said this, but what's a book that's blown your mind?
That is blowing my mind. Honestly, like the latest one that I find myself rereading, there's two that are influencing me, is the $100 Million Offers and then the Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Dude, I agree. I'm rereading both of those. Kid you not?
Yeah, it's okay. You're a different person every time you read them. So I like them.
Well, and I have to say, like the $100 Million Offer, it's not, we got that, but we also got this really cool like pricing guide that he gave us because we spend lots of money with Alex and Mosey's group. Is that so as my avatar changes, I have to recreate it, so I have to go back through the technology and like refigure it out. In case you guys haven't heard on the rock stars that you're not hearing, is that we're heavily influenced by the same people. And it's interesting because in our spaces, these are people who are starting to rise to the top of influence because they're making such an impact. So check out Alex Mosey, Dan Martell, and some of these books that we've mentioned. What's one of your top time saver hacks, JP?
Oh man, I have to say, and this is an AI tool, by the way, it's note takers. I really like to delve into like my clients' businesses and have a conversation, and that's the best way I could get the most information. But when I'm typing and like listening and asking, like I don't think I'm as sharp. The AI note takers for us like have helped us with develop better proposals, better job descriptions. Like it's just, I don't know, like one of those tools that really help us save time.
Which one do you use?
I use Fathom. Fathom allows us to like ask the AI for like, hey, what did they say about like Canva and CapCut skills that they're looking for? And so like we can create assessments around that, for example, right? But Fathom is the one we use. We've also seen Fireflies and Otter, but I don't know. We kind of like Fathom a little bit better. Got it.
What's the one thing you wish you'd stop doing way sooner in your business?
I think that hiring for every role, people don't, now that they've come exposed to our company, they know us as like EA and VAs, but we used to hire every kind of role. We used to hire developers, we used to hire marketers, we used to hire project managers, account managers. Right. That was nuts. Like I had to become an expert in all these industries and in all these positions you need subject matter expertise to recruit well. And so like, That yeah, I won't ever go back to like, hey, what are you hiring for? Let me see if I
Let's
can
go
find them
hire a
here.
super VA that does all the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like niching to VAs and EAs, I wish I would have done that immediately after, like when I started. That should have been the thesis of our company.
Awesome. Well, that's a great thing about being so young is, anyway, you got plenty of time. What is the most time consuming task that you secretly enjoy?
I like building skills assessments. So a part of like how we recruit is that we have people do like test projects and skills assessments. It takes me hours to think about like, oh, if I have a gym that these guys are coming in to help like retention efforts or like billing and stuff. I just like to think about ways that I can see if a candidate has it in a way that can be like plagiarized or copied from somebody else. I just love creating test projects.
Love that. What's the last thing that you've delegated?
This is more like personal. It was more like house management delegation, but weighing my food. So I started calorie tracking this year, and like I used to like weigh all my foods and stuff like that. But now I hired somebody that helps us with cooking, cleaning, and laundry in the house. And I taught this person how to weigh grams of macros.
So do you literally like wake up and have all your food measured out and ready to go for the day?
Yeah. Well, like because I work from home, this person comes in and helps during the day. So like, lunch and dinners are already like measured in terms of like weights. So I can
they
just
cook
put it
your
in
lunch and dinner.
Yeah. So I think house managers and all that stuff is a different way of delegating your time. Huge ROI, by the way.
Huge.
Highly recommend.
It's funny because there's more. So you're not the first person on this show who said that exact same thing. I had a guest just last week who talked about how she's never cleaned her house. Like that, her one thing she will not do is clean her home. And Dan Martell's really big on these house managers. And I think there's a lot of like cultural shame around it. It's like a different episode. How we can leverage delegation to never do the things that we don't want in our personal lives. Cause like, dude, I'm running to the grocery store from time to time going, why am I doing that now? So great. Last question. And this is the question of the entire season. I think this is going to be the last episode as well.
Okay.
For the entire season. So what we're doing is we're tallying at the end of the episode. I'm going to ask you a question. So this might be the grand finale. Seth, you can do that however you want, graphically.
Well,
but here's the question. Is it, JP, is it VA or AI? Because the whole season is AI versus, VAs. So we're asking, is it?
Do I have to pick one or the other?
You can be you're an entrepreneur. There's no rules. You can do whatever you want.
So I think that both in isolation are going to be outdated. So they have to be together. It's VA using AI. So VA as the ultimate toolsmith for AI.
Love that answer. I don't know what Seth's going to do with it, but that's probably the best way to summarize this whole season is what you just said there. So Seth, do what you want with the tallies. Let's see who wins for the whole season. And maybe let's put that message on there as well, is that isolation, they won't exist, but together they will be powerful. So JP, thank you for this wonderful episode. I sure appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I enjoy these kinds of conversations and learning from you and what you're doing. And I'd love to have these conversations again if the opportunity comes up. But yeah, thanks for the time.
Yeah. So how do people get a hold of you? Like tell them about your business, like what you can do to help them, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So really quickly, as I mentioned, we help business owners buy back their time by helping them find virtual and executive talent. And we do the whole talent acquisition, and then we're an employer of record. You can find me through Instagram is jp.forno or in LinkedIn as JP Forno. And we can have a conversation. Even if you're just like VA curious, we could just have a conversation. I'm happy to be a resource in any which way I can.
And your company website.
Oh, company website is trymeteor.com. A lot of that stuff still has like that we hire like project managers. So a little bit outdated. That's why I like lead people to like the LinkedIn, but trymeteor.com. You will see a calendar link there and we can have a conversation.
Okay. JP, thanks again for being on the show. Thanks for tuning into the Willpower Podcast. As always, this is Will Humphreys reminding you to lead with love, live on purpose, and never give up your freedom. Until next time.